It's an extremely common trend for medical doctors to be grifters writing nutrition or diet related books. Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today, but a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, be greatly appreciated. If you are not following or subscribed, please do so. And if you will be kind enough to drop me a comment down below with your thoughts on this, or to let me know if you have read any such books and then realized as you were looking at it that they're basically just scamming people with nonsense. All right, this is an example of something that we see really commonly, and a lot of times these books sell really well, but the reality is there are plenty of medical doctors who make their entire living trying to debunk nutritional science research, keeping in mind most of the time it is not their field of study. These are not doctors who've gotten a registered dietitian. They don't have an RD. They haven't been through all the everything required to become one of those, or they may have no nutrition background at all. Even more so, they'll cover areas that is not their specialty. So, for example, a surgeon discussing topics of cardiology, well, then cardiologists will then be out there debunking his work, saying he literally has no idea what he's talking about. Okay. And I can give you a quick example of someone who does that. It would be like, Sean Baker with the cardiologist, right? He puts out a lot of information about LDL, and he has posted his LDL numbers, and he's a perfect example of, if you guys go check their cardiologists who've said his blood work is atrocious and his knowledge and understanding of lipids and how they pertain to heart disease is incorrect, meaning we're people who treat this for a living. This is our specialty. We see this all the time, and we know how these things work and affect it, and he does not have a proper understanding medically of the area, and he is going to have problems based on his blood work. He is in trouble. Okay, yet he's insistent upon what he's saying, but keeping in mind it's not his specialty. He is a completely different type of doctor, and again, cardiologists jump on that. There's also been examples, definitely a lot of the really low carb ones. It tends to be the really low carb and keto type doctors, right? Or all the way over to the more extreme, certain types of paleo and other stuff. So there have been, again, medical doctors who write books going on and on about anti-nutrients and oxalates and all this other stuff. And then you will see, because they get enough of a traction in their book sell, that you'll then see nutrition researchers and professors in nutrition schools at universities write rebuttals. And that's what's fascinating. Their followers say, oh yeah, well, this must be true, and they're a doctor, right? But again, they're often dabbling outside of their specialty, and keeping in mind they're selling books. And what you have to understand, science has to be willing to change based on evidence. And what you see with these doctors, once they write a book, their name and their money are now tied to an outcome. Okay, they going to have extreme personal bias towards being resistant, especially in public. Even if they see evidence that completely refutes their position, if they're making large amounts of money on these book sales and their livelihood is now coming from it, they have a vested interest in ignoring all data, all information to the contrary. So even if newer meta-analysis and data and direct clinical trials show, hey, this is wrong, they're going to have a problem with it. It's because it's affecting their money. Just like every other human, when something attacks your livelihood, it's a threat to your income, man, you're going to get defensive. So they're going to be biased towards that. But so all this stuff, but then you go look and literally like Baylor College of Medicine and Harvard and these people, their nutrition departments have written rebuttals about the nonsense with anti-nutrients. They're like, this isn't true, and then if you cook this problem goes away, and they also have these benefits, or simply drinking more water eliminates this problem with oxalates for people who have it. They go through but this is their area of expertise. Okay, and they're like, look, we have plenty of data on this. We have meta-analysis, there's data showing, look, this is how you resolve this. It's not the problem that's being made out to be in this book. They're like, it's just simply not. And then they'll point out population data debunks it. Like alone, if this was true, then you would see large population problems as a result of this. And that's a perfect example. Look, guys, if eating large amounts of fruits and vegetables was a problem, we would know already. Like, we would see that the people who eat the most fruits and vegetables would have all sorts of health problems, and that people who don't eat them would be, healthier on average at the larger population level. And it's very much the opposite. In fact, there's an upward trend, particularly antioxidant intake and from diet and food, that there's a general open-ended upward trend towards reduced all-cause mortality, reduced illness as these things are added. You'll see all these books saying, oh, they're the problem. But again, it doesn't match the real world, and it doesn't match the data. These are just medical doctors selling books. And one of the big ones I've seen, and a lot of the low-carb people love to cite this, I'm not going to name the names, but there are multiple medical doctors who, for some of them, since the 1980s, at least one of the major ones, had been writing books claiming, trying to debunk the lipid hypothesis. The real-world data has gotten higher and higher and higher and stronger, to the point where all the atherosclerosis organizations have said we now definitely have causation that LDL is the cause of atherosclerosis, right? It's gotten, the data has gotten so strong that we feel that we can safely state this. Whereas in the people who write these books, their position is, well, but keep in mind, they're not open to the new data. Some have been writing books since the 1980s. Well, then all these meta-analyses continue to show this to be true. And yet then what we saw, and then the low-carb people love to cite it. There was a meta-analysis done, and guess what? All the doctors, and they were MDs, they're not dietitian research, they're not nutrition researchers, did a meta-analysis showing the opposite, saying, look, we've analyzed the data, and we've determined through our meta-analysis that LDL-C does not cause it. But then you look, and they're all doctors who write books on the topic, who literally make a living. So they got funding for their own study. They did all their own analysis. But the people who did the actual analysis and the conclusions and wrote the conclusions literally make their living selling books stating the outcome that they already decided they were going to do. Okay? This is a case of, if you were to look at this as complete, would be junk science. In other words, the financial bias is so massive that every person who's involved in the study has already made $1 million or more off of stating the exact opposite of what all the research and the other experts have determined. So of course they're going to have a bias to say, yep, no, we analyzed all the data ourselves and we concluded that all the mainstream is wrong and that our books that we're making millions of dollars selling are correct. Like, this is called grifting, guys. This is a textbook example. But all the followers of these fringe diets eat it up.